The first bullet cracked to the morning air at 0647 local time, and Sergeant Marcus Reed felt the ground beside him explode into fragments of rock and frozen dirt. He dove left, his body moving on 15 years of muscle memory, rolling behind a boulder that offered maybe 18 inches of cover. The Hindu Kush Mountains erupted with the staccato rhythm of automatic weapons fire. In the span of 3 heartbeats, Marcus Reed understood something terrible. His squad was going to die here. Contact left, contact front, contact right. The calls came in rapid succession, overlapping, voices strained with controlled panic. Marcus presses back against the boulder, his M4A1 tight against his chest, and forced himself to process the geometry of their destruction. They were in a valley. Grid reference NW742385. The walls rose on 3 sides like the interior of a broken bowl, ridgelines at 200 meters east, 180 meters west, and 250 meters north. The only exit pointed south, toward a narrow defile they'd used for insertion 6 hours ago. And that defile was now crawling with muzzle flashes. 30-plus fighters. Maybe 40. PKM machine guns establishing interlocking fields of fire from elevated positions. RPG teams repositioning on the northern ridge. AK-47s filling every gap in between. Classic L-shaped ambush executed with textbook precision. Reed, we got 2 down. Corporal Jimmy Torres' voice cut through the chaos, and Marcus saw his medic scrambling toward a cluster of bodies 30 meters to the east. Brooks is hit. Jensen's not moving. Marcus keyed his radio. Viper Maine. This is Viper 6. Troops in contact. Grid November Whiskey 7485. 8 personnel. Requesting immediate fire support in QRF. How copy? Static. Then a voice he recognized. Captain Morrison at Firebase Wolverine, 43 kilometers southeast. Viper 6, Viper Maine copies. Be advised, closest air support is 2 F-16s returning from separate tasking, 45 mics out. QRF is spooling up, but medevac cannot launch until LZ is secured. Estimate 1 hour minimum for dust-off. Can you hold? 1 hour. Marcus watched the PKM burst walk across the rocks 2 meters to his left, showering him with stone splinters. PFC Danny Reeves was returning fire from behind a dead mule, the animal's body jerking with each incoming round. Staff Sergeant Wade Harris had his element pinned in a shallow depression, unable to move in any direction without exposing themselves to crossfire. They couldn't hold for 10 minutes. Negative, Viper Maine. We are fixed and flanked. Ammunition will not last. We need that air now. Viper 6, I understand. Doing everything possible. Hold what you got. The radio went silent, and Marcus Reed, veteran of Fallujah, Kandahar, and 3 deployments that had turned his hair gray at 34, began doing the math that no ranger ever wants to do. 2 wounded, maybe Kia. 6 effectives. Ammunition approximately 40%. Enemy 40 plus, elevated, entrenched, with unlimited resupply from a village they'd been surveilling. 45 minutes to air support. They would be overrun in 15. Marcus started working on his death letter in his head, the one he'd never written down, the one to his daughter, who turns 7 next month. He was trying to find the words when the impossible happened. A single shot cracked from somewhere high and to the south. Different sound, sharper, older. On the northern ridgeline, a PKM gunner's head snapped back, and his weapon went silent. 2 seconds later, another crack. A second PKM, eastern ridge. The gunner slumped forward, his body draping over the rocks like a discarded puppet. Marcus blinked. That was 400 meters. Maybe 450. Wind swirling through the valley. Uphill angle. Moving targets. If that opening hooked you, trust me, this story only gets more intense. Subscribe now for more incredible true stories of courage and hit that notification bell. Now, let me show you what happened next. A third shot. This one took an RPG team before they could fire. The rocket went spiraling into empty sky as its operator crumpled. Who the hell is shooting? Harris screamed across the valley. Marcus was already scanning south through his ACOG, searching for the shooter. The ridge above the southern defile rose in broken terraces, shadows deep in the pre-dawn gray, rocks stacked like ancient fortifications. There, a shape, small, impossibly small, pressed into a natural depression 700 meters out, a rifle barrel barely visible against the stone. 400 meters below her, Amina Nazari pressed her cheek against the wooden stock of her father's Mosin Nagant and exhaled slowly. The rifle was old, older than her, a Soviet relic from the war her grandfather fought, its barrel worn smooth by decades of use, its scope a German hunting optic held in place by wire and prayer. It should not have been capable of precision shooting at these distances. But Amina had learned that capability was not determined by equipment. It was determined by necessity. She worked the bolt, chambered another 7.62 by 54 millimeters round, and found her next target, a fighter moving between rocks on the eastern ridge, aka 47 rays, probably shouting something she couldn't hear. She led him by 16 inches, adjusted for the crosswind coming from the northwest, and squeezed. The man dropped mid-stride. That was 4. Amina had been watching these soldiers for 2 hours before the ambush began. She'd been traveling south, moving through terrain she knew better than her own heartbeat, when she'd spotted them in the valley below. 8 men, American patches, Rangers, she'd recognized from the scrolls on their shoulders. She'd considered warning them. There were Taliban in these mountains. She'd seen their camps, counted their numbers, marked their movements in the notebook she carried everywhere. But warning them meant revealing herself, and Amina had survived 3 years in these mountains by remaining invisible. Then the ambush had begun, and invisibility became irrelevant. She fired again. A 5th fighter, this one 380 meters, tried to flank the Americans' eastern position. He went down face first into the scree. Her hands moved automatically. Bolt up, back, forward, down. Chamber the round. Breathe. Aim. Fire. 6. 7. The Taliban were responding now. She heard shouts echoing across the valley, saw figures pointing toward her position. They hadn't located her exactly. She was too far, too high, and the acoustics of the valley were scrambling her shots, but they knew death was coming from the south. Amina shifted positions, crawling 4 meters to her left, settling behind a different rock. Rule number 1, never fire more than 3 shots from the same location. Her father had taught her that before the Taliban took him, before they took everyone. She found another target, fired. 8. Below, she could see the Americans starting to react. The big one, the leader, she assumed, was gesturing toward her position, trying to coordinate something. 2 of his men were down, one clearly wounded, the other motionless. The medic was working frantically, his hands red to the wrists. Amina calculated 30-plus fighters at the ambush's start, 8 confirmed kills. But the Taliban weren't withdrawing. They were regrouping, and she could see reinforcements moving down from a camp she'd identified 2 weeks ago, approximately 1.2 kilometers to the northeast. The Americans were still pinned, still dying, and she was running low on ammunition. Amina made a decision. She slung her rifle across her back, checked a knife at her belt, and began moving down the ridge. Not cautiously. There was no time for caution, but quickly, using paths she'd memorized years ago, her 19-year-old body flowing through the rocks like water. Marcus Reed saw her coming 3 minutes later. At first, he thought he was hallucinating. Combat stress, blood loss from a fragment that had grazed his arm, the accumulated exhaustion of 6 hours patrolling through hostile terrain. But then Harris saw her too. What the? A figure emerged from the southern rocks, moving at a dead sprint, and Marcus's brain struggled to process what his eyes were reporting. It was a girl. She was small, 5'4", maybe 5'5", wrapped in clothing that had seen better decades. A heavy shawl covered her head and shoulders, and dust caked every visible surface. She carried a rifle that looked like it belonged in a museum, and she was running directly toward their position. The Taliban saw her too. Rounds started tracking her movement, kicking up dirt 5 meters behind, then 3, then 1. She didn't flinch, didn't slow, just angled her approach, using terrain features Marcus hadn't even noticed to break the shooter's angles. 30 meters out, she dove behind the same boulder cluster where Jimmy Torres was working on Brooks. Marcus expected screaming. Panic, the wide-eyed terror of a civilian caught in a war zone. What he got was a pair of dark eyes that held nothing at all. The girl looked at Torres, then at Brooks, then at the wound in Brooks's thigh. She said something in Pashto, quick, clipped syllables, and pulled a bundle of cloth from inside her shawl. Torres stared at her. What? She switched to Dari, then, haltingly, to English. Tourniquet. Above. Tight. She pointed at Brooks's thigh, then at the cloth. He dies in 4 minutes without. Marcus scrambled across open ground to reach them, round snapping over his head. He slid in beside Torres just as the girl, the shooter, finished tying off the makeshift tourniquet. Who are you? She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a battered notebook from inside her clothing and flipped to a page covered in hand-drawn maps. Her finger jabbed at a specific point. Cave. 300 meters. South-southeast. Her English was accented but functional. Learned from somewhere, though Marcus couldn't imagine where. Taliban cannot follow into mountain. We go now or we die here. Marcus shook his head. We have air support coming. 40 minutes. You have 12 minutes. She pointed to the northeast ridge. Reinforcements. 20 more fighters. I count them 2 days ago. They arrive in 12 minutes. You have 50 enemies. All angles, no cover. She's right, Sarge. Harris had crawled close enough to hear. His M4 pointed vaguely south. I'm seeing movement on the northeast slope. Lots of it. Marcus looked at the girl. Really looked. She was young. Impossibly young. 19, maybe younger, with a face that might have been beautiful once but had been worn raw by wind and sun and something harder than either. Her eyes were the color of mountain slate, and they held the same emptiness he'd seen in operators who'd spent too long in the dark. This child had killed 8 enemy fighters in 3 minutes from 400 to 700 meters, using a rifle that should have been in a museum. Who are you? He asked again. Amina. No last name. No explanation. We go now. Marcus made a decision. Harris, get your element moving south. Torres, Brooks can walk. Negative. Femoral involvement. He needs a litter. Improvise one. Reeves, Carter, covering fire on the northern ridge. Hassan, relay to Viper Main. We are displacing south. We'll transmit new coordinates when secure. The squad moved. Amina led them through terrain that seemed impassable, finding paths between rocks that Marcus would have sworn weren't there. She moved without hesitation, her slight form slipping through gaps that the Rangers had to force their way through, pausing only to check angles and listen to sounds Marcus couldn't hear. Behind them, the Taliban were following. Marcus could hear them. Shouts echoing off stone walls, the crack of AKs fired blindly in their direction, the distinctive whoosh of an RPG that detonated 50 meters short. The enemy had lost their ambush advantage, but they hadn't lost their numerical superiority, and they weren't going to let 8 Americans escape into the mountains. Here, Amina stopped at what appeared to be a solid rock wall. Then she pulled aside a curtain of dead brush, revealing an opening barely wide enough for one person to squeeze through. Cave system. Mujahideen built during Soviet War. Extends 3 kilometers into mountain. Many exits. Taliban do not know all of them. How do you know them? Those slate-gray eyes met his. I have lived here for 3 years. They entered the caves one by one. Amina first, then Harris's element, then Torres and Jensen, carrying Brooks on a makeshift stretcher of rifles and jackets. Marcus went last, pausing at the entrance to send a final burst toward figures he could see moving through the rocks 200 meters out. Then he was in darkness. The cave swallowed them completely. Marcus activated the Surefire mounted on his M4, and the beam revealed a passage that had been worn smooth by water thousands of years ago and then improved by human hands. Support timbers lined the walls in places, and he could see where explosives had widened natural choke points. The Mujahideen had built this place during the Soviet War, fortified it, used it to ambush Russian convoys, and then vanish into the mountains like ghosts. Now that same architecture was keeping his squad alive. They moved deeper. 5 minutes. 10. Amina navigated without light, her hands trailing along walls. She seemed to know by touch. The sound of pursuit faded behind them, replaced by the drip of water and the echo of their own breathing. 15 minutes in, Amina stopped. Rest here. 5 minutes. The passage opened into a small chamber, perhaps 15 feet across, with a ceiling high enough to stand. A trickle of water ran down one wall, collecting in a natural basin that someone had lined with smooth stones. Marcus's squad collapsed. Torres went immediately back to Brooks, checking the tourniquet, administering morphine from his kit. Harris positioned Carter, and Reeves at either end of the chamber. M4S pointed toward darkness. Jensen, who'd taken around his plate carrier but was otherwise functional, sat against the wall, his eyes closed, his breathing ragged. Marcus turned to Amina. 3 years. You've been living in these mountains for 3 years. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled out her notebook, flipping to pages Marcus hadn't seen before. Lists, names, numbers, dates. 37 Taliban camps within 40 kilometers. 412 fighters, counting new arrivals last month. 7 weapon caches. 3 communication relays. She showed him a page covered in hand-drawn maps, positions marked with precise detail. I watch. I count. I write. Why? The question hung in the darkness. Harris stopped talking into his radio. Torres paused his work. Even Brooks, fading in and out of consciousness, seemed to still. Amina's face showed nothing, because they killed everyone else. She said it without emotion, without drama. The words fell into the silence like stones into a well. My father was a schoolteacher. He taught girls. Taliban came to our village in winter 3 years ago. 47 people. They killed them all. Burned the school. Burned the houses. She paused. I was not there. I was hunting with my father's rifle. When I came back, there was nothing left. And you've been out here ever since? The mountains keep me alive. The rifle keeps me useful. She looked at him directly. You're going somewhere. Not patrol. You move too fast, too direct. You have objective. Marcus hesitated. Operational security dictated he reveal nothing. But operational security assumed friendly forces didn't include teenage Afghan snipers who just saved a squad from annihilation. Down pilot. F-16. She ejected 12 hours ago, approximately 6 kilometers northwest. He pulled out his map, pointing to coordinates that were now almost meaningless given their displacement. Captain Sarah Vance. We were sent to extract her, but we walked into your friends on the way. Amina studied the map. Then she flipped to a page in her notebook and compared the two. I know this place. Ridge above Karengal tributary. There's a village nearby. Nangalam district forces use it for supply. If she survived ejection, she is hiding. But Taliban will be searching too. How long until they find her? If she stayed near crash site, already found. If she is smart, move to higher ground, maybe 16 hours. Maybe less. Marcus checked his watch. They'd been in the caves for 20 minutes. Air support should be on station by now. But air support meant nothing if they couldn't reach a clearing to guide it. Can you get us to her? Amina was quiet for a moment. Then she pointed to a passage on the left side of the chamber. This way leads northwest. Exits above the valley where your pilot fell. 3 kilometers to the mountain, then 4 kilometers over open terrain. She looked at Brooks. He cannot make the climb. The others must carry him, and that slows everything. We don't leave people behind. I know. Something shifted in her voice. Almost respect. That is why I helped you. Taliban leaves behind everyone who slows them down. Americans do not. Marcus turned to his squad. Harris, status? Hassan got through to Viper Main. They're scrambling QRF, but it's still 40 minutes out minimum. F-16s are on station, waiting for coordinates. Weather's coming in. They got maybe 2 hours before the mountains sock in and all air support goes away. Brooks. Torres shook his head. He's stable, but that's temporary. The tourniquet's buying time, but he needs surgery within 4 hours or he loses a leg. Maybe his life. The pilot, no contact. Her beacons intermittent. Mountains are blocking everything. Marcus looked at the cave walls pressing in around them. 8 Rangers. 1 wounded badly. 1 objective 6 kilometers away. 40 plus Taliban behind them. Unknown number ahead. 2 hours of usable air support. And a 19-year-old girl who'd already killed 8 men to save strangers she'd never met. Amina, if we push through these caves and go after the pilot, what are we facing? She consulted her notebook. The valley where she fell is Taliban controlled. There's a camp 2 kilometers east, approximately 40 fighters. They patrol the ridgelines, but not consistently. They are lazy, poorly trained. More dangerous is the gun truck. Technical with DSHK. It controls the valley entrance. Anything that moves without permission, they destroy. Can we get around it? Yes. If we move through high ground, stay above 3,000 meters, We avoid most patrols. But it adds time. 2 hours minimum. 2 hours they didn't have. Marcus made a decision that would either save them all or get them killed. We split. Harris's head snapped up. What? Torres stays here with Brooks and Jensen. Keep them stable, wait for QRF. The rest of us go after Vance. That leaves 3 wounded or walking wounded with 1 medic. In a cave system we don't know, with hostiles between them and extraction. Torres knows these caves now. Amina, can you show him the route to the nearest extraction point? She nodded. 1 kilometer south. Opens above the valley where you entered. If your helicopters can reach it, they can extract. And the Taliban between here and there? 12, maybe 15 fighters. But they are spread thin, searching for you. If your medic is careful, if he moves at night, they can avoid contact. Marcus looked at Torres. His medic's face was grim, but his jaw was set. I can do it, Sarge. Get Brooks to that extraction point. Hold until QRF arrives. You'll be alone. I'll have Jensen once he's back on his feet. And that girl's notebook. He nodded toward Amina. She's mapped everything. I can follow it. Marcus made his decision. He spent 10 minutes with Amina, going over the routes, the patrol patterns, the locations of every Taliban position she'd marked in 3 years of solitary surveillance. Torres copied key pages into his own notepad, his face illuminated by the red glow of his headlamp, committing distances and terrain features to memory. Then Marcus divided their remaining ammunition. 40% of Torres's element, enough to break contact if necessary, not enough for sustained engagement. The remaining 60% distributed between himself, Harris Carter, Reeves, and Hassan. They'd need every round. Brooks regained consciousness long enough to grip Marcus's arm. Get her, Sarge. That pilot. Don't let them take her. We'll get her. And the kid. Brooks's eyes moved to Amina, who stood apart from the group, checking her rifle's action in the dim light. She saved my life. You make sure she gets out too. I will. At 0742, Marcus Reed led what remained of his combat effective squad deeper into the mountain. Amina went first, her small form barely visible even with their weapon lights activated. Behind her came Harris, then Reeves, then Carter with the M249 saw, then Hassan on rear security. Marcus moved in the middle, coordinating, ready to shift to any position that needed reinforcement. The caves narrowed. What had been comfortable passage became a squeeze that forced them to turn sideways, scraping body armor against ancient stone. The ceiling dropped until they were hunched, then crawling, then belly down in water that had been accumulating for millennia. It smelled of minerals and something older, the deep earth breath of places that had never known sunlight. Amina moved through it like a ghost. Marcus watched her find handholds invisible to his eyes, anticipate turns before they appeared, pause at intersections, and listen to sounds beyond human hearing. 3 years alone in these mountains. 3 years of learning every path, every shadow, every way the wind moved through stone. What did that do to a person? How old were you? He asked the question during a brief rest, his voice barely above a whisper. When they came to your village. 16. And you've been out here since. By yourself. The mountains do not judge. They do not take sides. They only reward those who understand them. She looked at him with those slate-gray eyes. I understand them. You understand more than mountains. Those shots back there, that wasn't luck. That was training. My father taught me to shoot before he taught me to read. He said a woman in Afghanistan must be able to defend herself because no one else will. He taught you well. Something flickered in her eyes. Pain, maybe? Or the memory of pain that had been cauterized so thoroughly it no longer registered. He taught me everything. They continued. The cave system bent northwest, then north, then northwest again, following the bones of the mountain. Marcus lost track of time in the darkness. His watch still worked, but the numbers became abstract, divorced from any sense of day or night. They could have been walking for hours or days. Then, abruptly, Amina stopped at a narrow crack in the rock, her body silhouetted against the glow. She held up one hand, hold position, and then slipped through the gap, disappearing from view. Marcus waited. 1 minute. 2. His grip tightened on his M4. 3 minutes. Then Amina's face appeared in the crack. Clear. Come. They emerged onto a mountainside that Marcus didn't recognize. The altitude hit him immediately, thin air, sharp and cold, burning in his lungs. They were above 3,200 meters, and the terrain around them was knife-edge ridges and sheer drops into valleys filled with morning mist. Below them, perhaps 2 kilometers distant, Marcus could see a thin column of smoke. The F-16, Amina said. What remains of it? The pilot? We must go see. The descent took 45 minutes. Amina chose a route that kept them on the military crest of the ridge, never silhouetted against the sky, always with rock and brush breaking their outlines. She moved with the patience of a hunter who had spent years stalking prey that could kill her with a single mistake. At 500 meters from the crash site, she stopped. Wait here. Before Marcus could object, she was gone, slipping down the slope like water through sand. He watched her through his ACOG, losing her, finding her again, losing her, finally giving up when she vanished into brush 200 meters below. I don't like this, Harris muttered. Neither do I. She could be leading us into a trap. She could have let us die in that valley. She didn't. Maybe she wants something. Maybe this is a long play. Marcus kept his scope trained on the crash site. The F-16 had come down hard, impacting on the slope and sliding approximately 80 meters before stopping against a rock outcropping. The cockpit was torn open, the canopy shattered, but there was no body visible in the wreckage. That was good. That meant Vance had ejected successfully, might have survived, or it meant the Taliban had already found her and taken her somewhere worse. 20 minutes passed. Then a figure emerged from the brush near the crash site. Amina, moving quickly but carefully. And she wasn't alone. Captain Sarah Vance looked like hell. She moved with pronounced limp, her flight suit torn in multiple places, dry blood visible on her forehead and left arm. But she was moving under her own power, which meant she was alive, which meant this mission might actually succeed. Marcus scrambled down to meet them, Harris and the squad providing overwatch. Captain Vance? She looked up at him with eyes that showed the strain of 16 hours alone in enemy territory. Sergeant Reed, 75th Rangers. Tell me you're not a hallucination. No, ma'am. We're here to extract you. Outstanding. She winced as she shifted her weight. Because I've got about 2 hours left before I collapse, and the locals haven't exactly been welcoming. How bad? Sprained ankle, possible hairline fracture. Lacerated arm from ejection. Concussion symptoms, though they're improving. I can walk, but I can't run. Marcus turned to Amina. The Taliban, have they been here? Patrol passed through 4 hours ago. They searched the crash site, but moved on when they did not find her. Amina nodded toward Vance. She was hiding in a drainage culvert 400 meters east. Very smart. It wasn't smart, it was desperate. Vance looked at the girl. Really looked. You're the one who found me? Who told me to stay quiet while those fighters walked right past? Yes. How did you know I was there? I have been watching this valley for 2 years. I know when something changes. Amina turned to Marcus. We cannot stay here. The patrol will return, and next time they will be more thorough. Marcus nodded. Can you walk, Captain? I can try. That's not what I asked. Vance's jaw tightened. She was Air Force, not infantry, but she hadn't survived ejection over hostile territory and 16 hours of evasion by being soft. I can walk, Sergeant. I might need help on the steep parts, but I can walk. Then let's move. They began climbing back toward the ridge. Reeves and Carter took point, following Amina's directions while she dropped back to help Vance navigate the loose scree. Harris and Hassan covered the rear, their weapons sweeping the valley below for any sign of pursuit. Marcus moved beside Vance, ready to catch her if she stumbled. Your aircraft, he said. What happened? Sam. SA-7 from the sound of it. Handheld, probably smuggled in from Pakistan. I was running close air support for another element, dropped below 10,000 feet to get eyes on a target, and they hit me from behind. She shook her head. Textbook shoot down. My fault for getting that low. You survived. That's what matters. Yeah, lucky me. They climbed in silence for a while, the only sounds their breathing and the crunch of loose rock underfoot. The altitude was taking its toll. Even Marcus, accustomed to high elevation operations, could feel the burn in his lungs and the heaviness in his legs. At the ridgeline, Amina called a halt, Problem. Marcus moved up beside her and looked where she was pointing. Below them, approximately 800 meters out, a group of fighters was moving through the valley. Marcus counted quickly. 6 men, all armed, carrying a mix of AK-47s and RPGs. They were moving with purpose, following a trail that led directly toward the crash site. Patrol? No. Amina consulted her notebook. Hunters. They know someone is in these mountains. They are searching systematically. Can we go around? That route adds 3 hours. Your pilot cannot make the climb. Can we wait them out? Amina shook her head. More will come. If we stay still, they will find us. If we move, they will hear us. Either way, we fight. Marcus assessed the terrain. The patrol was moving through a narrow section of valley, flanked by rock walls on either side. They were exposed, focused on the ground ahead of them, not expecting contact from above. It was an ambush opportunity. But engaging would alert every Taliban fighter within 5 kilometers to their presence. It would bring reinforcements, collapse their timeline, potentially cut off their extraction route. There's another way. Amina's voice was calm, absolutely calm. What way? I eliminate them. You continue moving. No. 7 seconds. She unslung her rifle, checking the chamber by touch. 300 meters. I have done this before. I said no. Her eyes met his. Then your pilot dies here. All of you die here. Because if that patrol reaches a crash site and finds her tracks, they will call in every fighter in this province, and your helicopters will not arrive in time. We don't send one person alone against 6. You do if that person is me. Something in her voice shifted, not pleading, not angry, just certain. Sergeant, I have killed more Taliban than I can count. I have watched them burn my village, murder my family, destroy everything I ever loved. And I am still alive because I am better than them at this one thing. She lifted the Mosin Nagant. Let me be better. Marcus Reed had made hundreds of tactical decisions in his career. He'd sent men into danger. He'd held ground that couldn't be held. He'd called in fire on positions that were too close to friendly forces because the alternative was worse. But he'd never sent a teenager alone against 6 armed fighters. 30 seconds. He said, finally, you have 30 seconds of fire. Then you move to Rally Point Alpha, regardless of outcome. Understood. And you take this. He handed her his backup radio, a Motorola that could reach the squad's primary net. You get in trouble, you call. Amina looked at the radio like she'd never seen one before. Probably hadn't, not up close. I will not need it. Take it anyway. She slipped the radio into her clothing and began moving down the slope. Marcus turned to Harris. Get everyone to cover on the reverse slope, full concealment, no movement, no noise. When she starts shooting, we move to Rally Point Alpha and wait. And if she doesn't make it, then we adjust. Harris didn't argue. He knew the math as well as Marcus did. The squad moved. Marcus stayed at the ridgeline, prone behind a rock that gave him a clear view of the valley below. Through his ACOG, he watched Amina descend, not toward the patrol, but laterally, positioning herself on a rock outcropping that overlooked their path. 300 meters. Maybe 320. She settled into a shooting position, the Mosin Nagant brace against stone. From this distance, she was barely visible, a smudge of brown against brown, a shadow within shadows. Marcus started counting. The patrol continued moving. They were relaxed, confident, weapons slung or carried loosely. They didn't expect contact this deep in their own territory. Mistake. Amina fired. The first shot took the point man in the chest. He went down without a sound, dead before his brain registered the impact. The second shot came 2 seconds later. The second man, an RPG gunner, dropped the tube he was carrying and clutched at his throat. Now they were reacting, shouting, diving for cover. But there was no cover, not in that narrow section of valley, and Amina had positioned herself to take advantage of exactly that. Third shot, third man down. Fourth shot, miss. The target had moved, but the fifth shot followed within a heartbeat, and he too collapsed. 6 seconds for confirmed kills. The remaining 2 fighters were scrambling, trying to reach the rocks, try and put something between themselves and the death that was finding them. One of them started screaming into a radio. Amina fired twice more. Silence. Marcus checked his watch. 7 seconds. She'd done exactly what she said she would do. He watched her move, slipping down from her position, covering ground quickly but not carelessly. She paused at the bodies, checking to make sure they were dead, Marcus assumed, and then retrieved ammunition from their weapons. She was already carrying her own rifle, but she picked up an AK-47 and slung it across her back. Smart. The Mosin Nagin held 5 rounds. She'd just expended 6, meaning she'd reloaded mid-engagement, which meant she was running low. 3 minutes later, she appeared at Rally Point Alpha. "It is done." Any response? One was speaking into radio when I killed him. His friends know something happened, but they do not know what or where. "We have time." Marcus nodded. "Then let's not waste it." They moved. The terrain shifted as they traveled, transitioning from high ridges into a series of connected valleys that Amina navigated with the same eerie certainty she'd shown in the caves. Twice she stopped them, raising one hand, and twice they waited in absolute stillness while sounds passed in the distance. Engines, voices, the clatter of equipment. Taliban, searching, but not finding. At 11:30 local time, approximately 4 hours since they'd split from Torres and the wounded, Amina led them into a ravine that cut to the mountainside like a wound. The walls rose 20 meters on either side, bare rock offering no handholds, no escape routes, no cover. "I do not like this," Harris muttered. "We go through or we go around. Around is 6 hours. Through it is..." They entered the ravine. It was approximately 400 meters long, twisting twice before opening onto the valley that Amina had identified as their extraction point. If they could reach it, if they could contact the QRF, if they could hold long enough for helicopters to arrive. 200 meters in, Amina stopped. "Listen." Marcus listened. At first, nothing, just the wind, the sound of their own breathing, the endless silence of the mountains. Then he heard it. Engines. Coming from ahead. Technical. Amina said, "The gun truck I told you about. They have moved it to the valley entrance. Can we go back?" "Back leads the patrol route. By now they have found the bodies. They will be coming." Marcus processed the geometry. Hostiles ahead. The technical with its DSHK, capable of cutting them apart at 600 meters. Hostiles behind. The reinforcements responding to Amina's contact. The ravine walls trapping them, channeling them toward one or the other. They were in the kill zone again. "Options," Marcus said. Amina studied the ravine walls, her mind clearly working through possibilities. The technical controls the valley entrance. To reach extraction, we must remove it. Can you hit the gunner at this distance? From here, no. The ravine block sight lines. I need elevation. She pointed to a spot where the ravine wall had partially collapsed, creating a rough slope of scree and broken stone. "If I climb there, I can see the valley. 800 meters to the technical. Difficult shot, but possible. And if you miss, then they know where I am, and they kill me with the DSHK. Marcus shook his head. "That's not a plan. That's suicide. It is the only plan that gets your pilot out." Vance had been quiet during the exchange, conserving her energy for movement, but now she spoke up. "There's another option." Everyone looked at her. "I'm the one they want. A captured American pilot is worth more than dead Rangers. If I get myself up, they'll stop searching. They'll focus on me, on moving me somewhere secure. That creates a window for extraction." "Absolutely not," Marcus said. "Sergeant, I'm already wounded. I'm slowing you down. Every minute you spend protecting me is a minute the enemy uses to tighten the noose. We don't abandon people, Captain. That's not how this works." "Then how does it work?" Vance's voice was sharp, strained. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like we're all going to die in this ravine unless someone makes a sacrifice." Amina had been listening silently. Now she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "No one is sacrificing anything." She unslung her rifle and began climbing the collapsed section of wall. Marcus grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" "What I have been doing for 3 years. Surviving." She pulled free of his grip. "The technical is 800 meters. The gun will be exposed, elevated on the truck bed. 1 shot. Then your helicopters can land and you can go home. And you? I will find my way. I always do." "That's not." "Sergeant." She turned to face him, and for the first time, Marcus saw something other than emptiness in her eyes. Pain, grief, a loneliness so profound it had become part of her. You have a home to return to. A daughter, yes? I heard you speaking to the wounded one. Marcus didn't answer. I have no home. I have no family. I have nothing but these mountains and this rifle and the knowledge of how to use both. Let me use them one more time. She began climbing before he could argue. Marcus watched her go, her small form scrambling up the scree with practiced efficiency, finding handholds invisible to his eyes. 50 meters. 100. She was above the ravine wall now, silhouetted briefly against the sky before dropping prone on a ledge that gave her a clear view of the valley beyond. The radio crackled. I see the technical. Marcus keyed his response. Range. 812 meters. Wind northwest, approximately 15 knots. Target is a gunner. He is eating something. Distracted. Wait, one. Marcus turned to Harris. Get on the horn to QRF. Tell them we are at Rally Point Bravo, preparing to neutralize blocking position. Extraction in 10 mics. On it. Marcus went back to the radio. Amina, when you take that shot, every hostile in the valley will converge on your position. Do you understand? Yes. You will not be able to reach us. You'll be cut off. I understand. I am ordering you to take the shot and then displace to Extraction Point Charlie. Grid reference. Sergeant. Her voice was calm. Calmer than it had any right to be. I told you. I have no home. But you do. Your daughter will see you again. I will make sure of it. She fired. Through his ACOG, Marcus saw the gun on the technical snap backward, his body crumpling over the DSHK. The other fighters around the truck scrambled for cover, shouting, searching for a shooter they couldn't see. Target down. Amina moved to exfil. More trucks coming. I count 3. Southeast, approximately 1 kilometer. A pause. I will slow them down. Negative, do not engage. She fired again. And again. Through the scope, Marcus saw a round impacting near the oncoming vehicles, forcing them to stop, to take cover, to deploy fighters in the wrong direction. She was buying them time with her life. Carter, Reeves, security on the valley entrance. Harris, where's that QRF? 8 mics out. 2 Blackhawks and an Apache escort. They're pushing hard, but there's still 8 minutes. 8 minutes. On the ridgeline, Amina continued firing. Marcus could see muzzle flashes now from the Taliban position. They'd located her, were pouring fire into her location. Rounds were impacting all around her, kicking up dust and rock fragments. She didn't move. She just kept shooting. Hassan, contact Viper Main. Tell them we have friendly asset under fire, Grid. He checked his GPS. Grid November Whiskey 741392. Request immediate suppression. Viper Main copies. Be advised, Apache is 3 mics out, requesting lays on target. Marcus looked at his equipment. His PQ-15 could designate targets, but not at 800 meters, not with this angle. Negative lays available. Clear to engage any technical vehicles in the valley. Danger close friendly position on Northwest Ridge. Copy danger close. Apache inbound. Marcus turned back to the ridgeline. Amina was still there. He could see her prone form, barely visible against the rock. She'd stopped shooting, which meant she was either out of ammunition or repositioning. Or dead. He pushed the thought away. Harris, move everyone to the valley entrance. Prep for extraction. What about? I'll get her. He didn't wait for a response. He was already climbing, scrambling up the same scree slope Amina had used, his body armor dragging at him, his lungs burning in the thin air. The collapsed wall was steeper than it looked, and twice he slipped, sliding back before finding new purchase. 100 meters. 150. Above him, the sound of a helicopter grew louder. He crested the ridge and saw the valley spread out below, a bowl-shaped depression with a single dirt track running through its center. The technical with the dead gunner was still there, along with 2 other trucks that had arrived while he was climbing. Fighters were scattered among the rocks, some shooting toward Amina's position, others scanning for the approaching helicopter. And there, Amina was alive. Barely. She was 30 meters from her original position, dragging herself toward cover, one arm hanging limply at her side. Blood trailed behind her, dark against the pale stone. The Apache came in low and fast. Its 30mm chain gun opened up on the technical trucks, the sound like a giant tearing canvas. Vehicles exploded. Fighters scattered. The valley floor transformed into a hellscape of fire and fragmentation. But it wasn't enough. Marcus could see fighters repositioning, moving toward Amina's position while the Apache dealt with the vehicles. She was wounded, alone, and they knew exactly where she was. He made his decision. Harris, I'm moving to extract friendly asset. Hold exfil until I return. Sarge. He killed the radio and started running. The terrain was treacherous, loose rock, hidden crevices, slopes that wanted to send him tumbling into the valley below. He moved anyway, ignoring the burning in his legs, the weight of his gear, the voice in his head that said this was insane. 100 meters to Amina. 80. He could see her clearly now. She was propped against a rock, her rifle across her lap, her face pale from blood loss. The wound was in her shoulder, through and through by the look of it, but bleeding badly. 50 meters. A fighter emerged from the rocks ahead, AK-47 raised. Marcus fired without stopping. 3 rounds sent a mass, and the man went down. 20 meters. Another fighter. Another burst. Another body. He reached Amina and dropped to his knees beside her. Can you move? Her eyes focused on him slowly. Why did you come? Because we don't leave people behind. He pulled out a field dressing, pressing it against her shoulder wound. Can you walk? I think so. Then walk. He hauled her to her feet, ignoring her gasp of pain, and started moving back the way he'd come. Her weight was nothing. She couldn't have been more than 100 pounds, but the terrain was unforgiving, and every step felt like it might be the last. Behind them, the Apache continued its gun runs, keeping the Taliban's heads down. But ammunition was finite, and eventually, the fighters would realize that one man was carrying one wounded girl toward the extraction point. Squad, this is Viper 6. I have the asset. Moving to exfil. Need covering fire and 3 mics. Copy, Sarge. We got you. The ridge seemed to take forever to climb. Marcus could feel Amina's blood soaking through his uniform, warm and slick against his arm. Her breathing was shallow, rapid, the signs of shock setting in. Stay with me. You hear me? Stay with me. I am tired. I don't care. You saved my squad. You saved the pilot. You don't get to die now. Why does it matter? Because you matter. Because what you did matters. He crested the ridge and saw the valley entrance below. His squad formed in a defensive perimeter, the Black Hawk settling into a landing pattern, rotors whipping dust into clouds. Move. Everyone move. They ran. The squad converged on the helicopters, covering fire crackling from every weapon. Marcus reached the first Black Hawk and handed Amina to the crew chief, who pulled her aboard with practiced efficiency. She's hit. Shoulder wound. Heavy bleeding. Get pressure on it. He turned to find Vance, saw her being helped aboard the second Black Hawk, saw Harris and the rest of the squad loading in behind her. Go, go, go. The helicopters lifted, banking hard, climbing away from the valley floor. Below them, muzzle flashes tracked their movement, rounds pinging off the airframe, but they were climbing, pulling away, leaving the kill zone behind. The flight to Firebase Wolverine took 17 minutes. Marcus spent every one of them watching Amina's face, watching the crew chief work on her wound, watching the medic aboard pump fluids into her arm. She was conscious, barely, her eyes flickering open occasionally, focusing on nothing. She's stable. The crew chief shouted over the rotor noise. Lost a lot of blood, but the round missed the artery. She's gonna make it. Marcus nodded. He didn't trust his voice. When they touched down at Wolverine, chaos erupted. Medical teams swarmed the helicopters, pulling wounded onto stretchers, rushing them toward the field's surgical unit. Vance was taken first, her rank and status as a recovered pilot making her priority one. But Amina was right behind, the medics recognizing the severity of her injury. Marcus watched them wheel her away. He was still standing there when Captain Morrison appeared beside him. Sergeant Reed. Sir, I've been listening to the comms. You want to explain to me how a 19-year-old Afghan girl ended up performing Overwatch for a Ranger squad, eliminating 23 enemy combatants, and holding a blocking position long enough for extraction? 23? Marcus hadn't counted. He knew it was a lot, but Our Apache had cameras running. We got gun tape showing every shot she took. 23 confirmed kills, range 300 to 800 meters, in conditions that would challenge any trained sniper. Marcus turned to face his commanding officer. Sir, without that girl, my squad would be dead in a valley in Hindu Kush. Captain Vance would be in Taliban hands. Everything we were sent to accomplish would have failed. I understand that, Sergeant. What I need to understand is who she is. Her name is Amina Nazari. She's been living in those mountains for 3 years, since the Taliban wiped out her village. She's been watching them, tracking them, killing them when the opportunity arose. He paused. And she saved our lives because it was the right thing to do. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. She's got no documentation, no family, no status of any kind. Technically, she shouldn't exist. Sir, which is why I'm going to need you to write the most detailed after-action report of your career. Every shot she took, every decision she made, every piece of intelligence she provided. I want it documented so thoroughly that when this crosses my desk to be forwarded up the chain, there's no question about what happened out there. Yes, sir. And Sergeant, Morrison's voice softened, just slightly. Between us, that girl did something extraordinary today. Make sure the report reflects that. Marcus spent the next 6 hours writing. He sat in a corner of the operations center, his uniform still stained with Amina's blood, and detailed every moment from the initial ambush to the final extraction. He described her shooting, the impossible precision, the calm under fire, the way she'd moved through terrain that had nearly killed trained rangers. He described her intelligence, the notebook, the patrol patterns, the 3 years of patient observation that had given her knowledge most analysts would kill for. And he described her decision, the moment she'd chosen to expose herself, to draw fire, to offer her life so that strangers could live, not for money, not for ideology, not for anything except the simple belief that some people were worth saving. When he finished, it was past midnight. He found himself walking toward the medical unit. The surgical team had stabilized Amina hours ago. She was in recovery now, sedated, her shoulder wrapped in bandages, for lines feeding her fluids and antibiotics. A Marine guard stood at her door, standard procedure for any unidentified individual in a secure facility. But he stepped aside when Marcus showed her credentials. She looked smaller in the hospital bed, younger. The hardness that had defined her in the mountains was gone, replaced by the vulnerability of sleep. She was just a girl who'd been carrying the weight of genocide on her shoulders for 3 years. Marcus pulled up a chair and sat down. He wasn't sure why. There was nothing to say. She was asleep, and even if she weren't, he didn't have the words. But it felt wrong to leave her alone. After everything she'd done, the least he could give her was presence. At 0230, she woke. Her eyes opened slowly, focusing on the unfamiliar ceiling, the unfamiliar room, the unfamiliar man sitting beside her bed. For a moment, fear flickered in her expression, the instinct to prey recognizing potential threat. Then she saw his face, and the fear faded. Sergeant. Hey! His voice was rough. How do you feel? Strange. She looked at the 4 in her arm, the bandages on her shoulder. I am in a hospital, field surgical unit. They fixed you up, said you're going to be fine. And the pilot? Your squad. All made it. Vance is in surgery for her ankle, but she'll recover. Brooks, the wounded one, made it to extraction. Torres held a position until QRF arrived. Everyone's alive. Something moved in her eyes. Not joy exactly, more like relief. The release of a burden she hadn't known she was carrying. That is good. Amina, Marcus leaned forward. I need you to listen to me. What you did out there, it wasn't normal. It wasn't even extraordinary. It was something I've never seen in 15 years of combat, and I've seen a lot. I did what was necessary. You did more than that. You sacrificed yourself for people you'd never met. You held a position alone against 40 fighters. You took shots that trained snipers would miss, and you did it with a rifle that belonged in a museum. She was quiet for a moment. My father always said the rifle does not matter, only the person who holds it. Your father was a wise man. He was a teacher. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. He taught me to read, to write, to think. He taught me that knowledge was the only weapon that could not be taken away. What happened to him? The smile faded. Taliban came. He refused to close the school. They made an example. In front of you? No. I was hunting. When I came back, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Marcus understood. Amina, listen. What happens next is going to be complicated. You're in a U.S. military facility with no documentation, no family, no legal status. There are going to be questions, a lot of them, and I can't guarantee how they'll be answered. I understand, but I want you to know something. He met her eyes. I'm going to fight for you. My squad is going to fight for you. Captain Vance is going to fight for you. What you did today matters, and we're going to make sure the right people know it. Why? Because you matter. Because you save lives. Because somewhere along the way, you decided that strangers were worth dying for, and that's not something that should go unrecognized. Amina looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, something changed in her expression. The walls she built over 3 years of solitude began to crack, and beneath them, Marcus saw something he hadn't expected. Tears. They spilled down her cheeks silently. No sobs, no sounds, just water tracing lines through the dust that still clung to her face. She didn't wipe them away. She didn't try to hide them. I thought I was dead. Her voice was barely a whisper. When I climbed that ridge, I thought I was going to die there, and I was okay with it. Because at least I would have done something. At least I would have helped someone. You did help someone. You helped a lot of people. But you came back. The tears continued falling. You came back for me. No one has ever. I was alone for so long. Marcus reached out and took her hand. It was small in his, callous from years of handling weapons, but fragile in a way that contradicted everything he'd seen her do. You're not alone anymore. The next 72 hours were chaos. Morrison forwarded Marcus's report up the chain, where it landed on desks that normally dealt with classified intelligence, not teenage snipers with museum piece rifles. Questions came back, lots of them, accompanied by requests for clarification, corroboration, and evidence. The gun tape from the Apache helped. Clear footage showed Amina's position, her shots, the bodies falling one after another. Forensic analysis confirmed the kills. 23 enemy combatants eliminated by 7.62 by 54 millimeters rounds, consistent with the Mosin Nagant she'd been carrying. Her notebook helped even more. When intelligence officers finally got their hands on it, they found 3 years of painstaking surveillance documented in precise, methodical detail. Patrol routes, camp locations, weapon caches, communication relays, leadership structures. It was a kind of ground truth intelligence that satellites and drones couldn't provide, compiled by a single person with unlimited patience and nothing left to lose. This is gold, one analyst said. This is absolute gold. We've been trying to map this network for years, and she did it alone on foot with a notebook and a pair of binoculars. Captain Vance added her voice to chorus. From her hospital bed, she dictated a statement describing her rescue, the moment Amina appeared in the drainage culvert, the guidance through Taliban-controlled territory, the final stand that allowed extraction. Without her, I would be dead or captured, Vance said. There's no ambiguity about that. She risked everything for someone she'd never met, and she did it without asking for anything in return. Brooks, recovering from surgery to save his leg, wrote his own statement. So did Torres, Harris Carter, Reeves, Hassan, and Jensen. 8 Rangers, each describing what they'd witnessed, each confirming what Amina had done. The picture that emerged was remarkable. A teenage girl, orphaned by Taliban violence, had spent 3 years becoming one of the most effective guerrilla operators in the Hindu Kush. She'd gathered intelligence that surpassed anything U.S. forces had compiled, developed skills that matched or exceeded trained snipers, and maintained absolute operational security against an enemy that controlled the entire region. And she'd done it alone. On the 4th day, a colonel from Special Operations Command arrived at Firebase Wolverine. Colonel Patricia Webb had spent 30 years in the Army, the last 15 in Special Operations. She'd overseen programs that officially didn't exist, worked with assets that the public would never know about, and made decisions that kept her awake at night. She thought she'd seen everything. Then she read Marcus Reed's after-action report. Where is she? Recovery ward, ma'am. She's mobile now, shoulders healing well. I want to speak with her. Marcus led the colonel to Amina's room. The Marine guard snapped attention, Webb ignored him, pushing through the door. Amina was sitting up in bed, her notebook open in her lap, adding notes to pages already covered in her precise handwriting. She looked up as they entered, her expression wary but controlled. "Miss Nazari, I'm Colonel Webb, United States Army Special Operations Command. I've read quite a lot about you." Amina's eyes moved from Webb to Marcus and back. "Should I be concerned?" On the contrary. Webb pulled up a chair, sitting so she was at eye level with the girl. "I'm here because my government owes you a debt that we're not sure how to repay. I do not want repayment. What do you want?" The question hung in the air. Amina was quiet for a long moment, her gaze dropping to her notebook. I want to stop being alone." Webb nodded slowly. "Then let me tell you what I can offer. Over the next hour," she laid out the options. Asylum in the United States, already being processed based on her service and intelligence she provided. Medical care for her shoulder, and any other issues that had developed during 3 years of living in the mountains. Education, if she wanted it. Housing, support. And, Webb added, "There's one more option. It's unconventional, and I can't promise anything, but I think you should hear it." "What option?" "We have programs for people with exceptional skills. People who've demonstrated abilities that most training cannot replicate. What you did in those mountains, the shooting, the surveillance, the tactical decision-making, those aren't things we can teach. They're things some people are born with and others will never have. You want me to fight for you? I want to give you the choice." Webb's voice was carefully neutral. "No pressure, no obligation. If you want to leave this life behind, no one will blame you. You've earned peace. But if you want to keep fighting, if you want to use the skills you've developed to stop people like the ones who destroyed your village, there's a place for you. Training, resources, support, a team." Amina looked at Marcus. He hadn't spoken since they'd entered the room, but his presence was steady, reassuring. "Sergeant Reed, if I do this, would I work with people like you?" "Maybe." The colonel's talking about a different kind of unit, more specialized, more independent. "But yeah, you'd work with people who understand what you've been through. People who come back for each other?" Marcus smiled. "Always." Amina turned back to Webb. "Then I will consider it. That's all I ask." The colonel stood. "Take your time. Heal. Think about what you want. When you're ready, let me know." She left. Marcus stayed. "You don't have to decide anything now," he said. The colonel wasn't lying. You've got options. You could walk away, start over, never touch a weapon again. Is that what you think I should do? I think, he paused, choosing his words carefully. I think you spent 3 years carrying something too heavy for anyone to carry alone. I think you've done things that most soldiers twice your age couldn't do. And I think whatever you decide, you deserve people who will stand with you. People like your squad, people who come back. Amina was quiet. Then, slowly, she closed her notebook and set it aside. Sergeant Reed, in my village there was a saying, the wolf who hunts alone eats, but the wolf who hunts with a pack survives. I have eaten for 3 years, but I do not think I have survived. What does that mean? It means I am tired of being alone. She looked at him directly, and for the first time since he'd met her, Marcus saw something other than emptiness or pain in her eyes. He saw hope. It means I am ready to find a pack. The sun was setting over the Hindu Kush, painting the mountains in shades of orange and gold. Marcus stood on the firebase observation platform, watching the light fade, thinking about everything that had happened in the past 4 days. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Amina appeared at his side, her arm in a sling, her face turned toward the mountain she called home for 3 years. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. Sometimes silence was enough. After a long while, she spoke. Sergeant, in the valley, when I was firing, when I thought I was going to die, I was not afraid. Why not? Because for the first time in 3 years, I was not alone. I knew you were coming. I knew you would try. She turned to look at him. That is worth more than survival. Marcus nodded. He understood. They stood together as darkness fell over the mountains. 2 soldiers who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and discovered something neither had expected. They'd found a reason to keep fighting. Not for countries. Not for flags. Not for medals or glory or any of the abstract concepts that politicians use to justify wars. For each other. For the pack. Amina Nazari, The girl who had been a ghost, a weapon, a survivor, was finally becoming something else. She was becoming human again. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered.